welcome back to the Keep It Tottenham podcast. You win some, you lose some. I am the token bird, and the bloke over here who is desperately missing his barber is...
Thomas the Vance, the music vendor.
Oh, crikey.
Pardon? Are you all right?
Check your woofers, here's some music. What do you want to talk about then?
Don't be like that. What I've strategically done, is I've put possibly the weakest item at the very top. And
just tell everybody this bit's not worth listening to.
None of it's worth listening to. I mean, just run. Naming rights.
Run? When's the last time you ran?
I told you. Naming rights. There was a big thing happened this week.
Was there? Was it really, really big?
Yeah.
Was it really big?
Well, I don't know how big Todd Klein is.
Never heard of him.
Former marketing director for the Miami Dolphins.
That's why I've never heard of him.
And he was instrumental in securing 180 million quid's worth of sponsorship for their stadium. And in a nutshell, for people that... I mean, this is an ongoing tale, and I referenced the fatigue surrounding Tottenham at the moment, with recurring things. Nothing's changed. But the naming rights thing, absolute pig's ear. And I'll just get a quick dig in at Levy here. I think this is another example of his dated business worldview. And the first alarm bell for me was the stadium anyway. I understand the concept. I totally get it, but I think it is at loggerheads with the way his current existing audience is, and making Tottenham Hotspur Football Club the core or anchor tenant, which they've come out on record as saying, so this isn't a dig out of nowhere. This is, I can't remember the name of the guy, but some business director at Spurs came out and said that, make no mistake, this is an NFL stadium. That does, weddings, bar mitzvahs, public floggings and all that on the side. But the naming rights thing, and talking about the model being flawed, and this business of having this enormous expanse, the biggest bricks and mortar retail site in Europe.
Just because retail's dying.
Well, just after we watched retail die for the last 20 years. And I just really struggling to see where the energy is for people coming to this, and it's like the whole thing is based upon those architects' dream pictures where we have these sort of faceless men in chinos holding little children in their hands and walking up and down, and daddy, can I have
and it's all very beige,
a Florida wingback crash helmet and all this nonsense, and I'm just wondering how far from reality it is. And then we factor in the COVID thing, which we keep coming back to because I don't think it's going anywhere and it's changed everything forever, blah, blah, blah. The naming rights thing is just another thing which, where's the value? And I can understand like Nike open up Nike Town on Oxford Circus. That makes sense to me. We're in London. It's like having an Aberdeen steakhouse on the corner of Tottenham Court Road. These are like landmark locations, and there's a real desire there because the footfall and the mass appeal of all the punters going past and everything.
Yeah.
But for a sports stadium that's in the middle of nowhere in North London, it's a struggle. And the naming rights thing, he wants an awful lot of money for. He wants 20 million a year forever or whatever. But the path we got on this was that he hired a leading specialist company in London and he fired them. And then he took over himself and he sent out, I don't know if there's some viewers who are older than born last week, but we got images leaked that we sent out on the dog is really enjoying licking his foot there.
It is just, if you can hear sort of sighing, heavy breathing, the cleaning of claws, it's the dog.
Yeah, it's an ambient track that we paid a lot of money for.
Oh, look at those eyes.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Daddy.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
But so anyway, he sent out this deluxe brochure trying to tempt all these blue chip companies, and nobody was interested. And what was bizarre is this is how far out from getting the job done he went. He offered it to AIA. And this is true. I know this from somebody who works for AIA. And they said no because they already have the Vitality Stadium in Bournemouth. And that just struck me as an absolute scream of desperation. That you would go to somebody who already
has a stadium.
A big footprint.
In the same country.
In the same, and it's
in
just...
the same league.
It's I don't know, it's just... it defies reason. Anyway, they do want to know. And they also turned down, for anybody listening, because we now have it, so it's not like, oh, we're making it up because we can't see it, so you can't prove it. But they were offered about... whenever it started, when it was made legal... Mm-hmm. The sleeve advertising, and they turned that down as well, just to let you know. But the last ditch attempt, the last throw of the coin from Levy, was that he tried to bundle the stadium into HSB's paws.
HSBC?
Yeah, HSBC, along with the debt and this, that and the other. And they said no.
Nobody wants our stadium.
I just think the stadium itself, I understand what it's supposed to do, and it's supposed to be busy 7 days a week, and, they have, I don't know, Celine Dion on one night, then Spurs playing whoever on Thursday night in the Europa and all that stuff. I get it, but I just don't think it's a good fit, and I think this is just very outdated. But they've now brought in this guy who has tremendous form for securing large amounts of money. But again, this is pre-COVID, and I just don't know. The thing I wanted to throw in as well, I did a little bit of clicking around online this morning, and just on the American football thing. Mm-hmm. Now, I've been on the Underground when there's been a game on, and seen face-to-face with, like, the just wall of fans. And there were people going to see, I don't even know the name of the teams, the Dolphins and the Kayaks or whatever playing each other, whatever the hell it is. And I understand there's a huge passion with some people.
Yeah.
And I understand it's a bit like the GAA in Ireland, that fans of the sport, will go to one game. They don't necessarily, and everybody's happy. And it's in a car going past Croke Park when it was chucking out after a huge game, and it's got all the flags on the cars and all the rest of it. And Bertie Ahern, Dirty Bertie, was walking down the road with one guy who looked like he was a Secret Service type guy, just with people within 10 feet of him. Yeah. So it's such a family orientated thing, there's no heat, there's no aggression. So it's not like you get on a tube train with a Spurs hat on and you're surrounded by Chelsea fans and you go, oh no, how can I take that hat off with nobody seeing me take the hat off? And all that sort of business. So I understand that, but I think it's of its time, the whole thing, the NFL in UK. So people will be screaming and scoffing at this. Oh, what's he know? I mean, it's enormous. So I had a little click, and it didn't take much digging around. And I think you can work out the allure, the pull of a sport or a thing by how many people kind of get involved with it. Like if you...
You mean not actually play it?
Yeah, you drive or you're on a train and you see kids in a park. What are they doing? And you're a kind of beach, you see people playing cricket. But football, I would say, is just bloody everywhere.
Well, it's kind of difficult to do American football on the hoof, isn't it? Because don't often need a lot of
this is it.
Equipment.
You can play football as long as you've got something to kick. And it can be a Coke can, it can be an orange you've had out of somebody's lunchbox. It doesn't need to be, like a FIFA-approved football. And also, as long as you've got something to kick, you can also, it doesn't matter how many people you've got. So if there's 5 of you, or there's 50 of you, you can still have a game of football.
Wasn't the origins of football from village to village?
I have no idea, and I'm not interested. But so, anyway, I managed to find very easily some numbers online. And these are accredited numbers, and they've been used in various online sort of documents by other people. And the actual interest in American football in the UK has crashed. 2015, 2016, so this isn't super up to date, but you're not telling me it's tripled during a pandemic and all the rest of it. 28,500 people played the game in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
But in 2006, the number was thought to be just over 45,000 people, which reflects the ease of taking part. Like, how on earth do you go about? You've got to have, you've got a rugby ball, you know, you can use that, but then you've got like the pitch and the players, and you can't. It's not a game you can downsize, and it's not a game you could like substitute, like I said, an orange or a Coke can or somebody's sandwich. Isn't going to work. And the other thing, which is constantly frustrating, is it is not free to air, and I just see people being made redundant in huge numbers, and that's going to continue now. This is like what do you call it? Like a ball that's rolling down. It's not going to be stopped, and more people are going to be working from home and all this sort of business. And I can see that the lack of interest in people paying additional subscriptions. So I'm just questioning how out of date that business model is for the NFL thing, and I'm talking about in the UK.
You don't think some people will pay prescriptions because they're not paying for their commute and so on?
Those people, absolutely. But the people who have been fired, made redundant,
Quite.
the people who work in the sandwich shops that are no longer being asked to come in to make sandwiches on 0-hour contracts, and all those people, and there are hundreds and thousands of them, from John Lewis and Harrods right down to the unnamed little corner shop. Yeah, that doesn't even have a hygiene sticker in the window, but it's selling sandwiches off a tray next to magazines.
Yeah.
All those people have gone, and it's highly unlikely they're ever going to come back. So anyway, I'm all doom and gloom, but I'm just questioning the how time expired all of these ideas are. Bricks and mortar retail, and then we've got this whole thing with the stadium. It looks amazing, great, wonderful. I've lived a life. I've been out. I've been to places better than that. I've been to places worse than that. So I'm not impressed. You spent a lot of somebody else's money to achieve it, but I'm not impressed. It's 5-star if you live in a high-rise tower block in Birmingham. It's amazing. Blow your socks off. Wow. I've just been taken up by a spaceship. You know, it's sensational. But if you've been outside the village, it's a big thing. You know, and I'm just wondering if it's going in the same direction as the rest of the world.
So what do you think is going to happen?
I think in the night it'll be pulled down by an angry mob.
Well, it might do if things don't go how people would like them to go. Talking of which...
Story of the week, which I was going to...
do we need just some sort of...
jingle?
Story of the week!
Story of the week, story of the week,
Story of the week.
There you go.
Story of the week.
Which also sounds a bit like Super Match Game from Blankety Blank, but we probably won't get sued. Bale got busted this week with an Instagram deceit, which was a curious business, and I think
Quite a bit weird.
Well, I think quite a lot of people just had to kind of read everything twice to
Do
work
you
out.
think he put that out?
Well, this is what we'll get to here because
Okay.
there's because
Am I getting ahead of ourselves?
when we're talking about Gareth Bale, we're talking about two entities. We're talking about the Welsh wizard himself, and we're talking about Jonathan Barnett, and we're not talking about anybody else. There's not a third person or a fourth or a fifth or a sixth. There's just two, and they're the same entity. But what I find curious is, so what actually happened was that he posted up on Instagram whilst training ahead of the Everton Cup game, a picture of him in his bib and stockings and what have you, with the line, "Good session today," with that sort of powerful emoticon for the arm raised.
Yeah, the bicep.
A bicep, which is what it's called, yes. And the truth was, there wasn't a good session today. The truth was, he'd quit early, asked for a scan, I presume on a part of his leg. The scan showed nothing, and then he decided that he was calling himself lame, and went home. Which is, I'm struggling to think of, good session today. Good session of not finishing your training because your leg hurt.
Still very odd.
It's very odd. And it immediately pleased me when I'd solved this puzzle, because it doesn't matter if it's Barnett and it doesn't matter if it's Bale. what this did was this removed the stick that the rednaps of this parish and Paul Merson have been using to beat Mourinho with. That why aren't you giving him a run out? Now, boring people like me who trawl through all the stats after the game, and yes, I do trust my eyes, but I didn't see anything watching Bale. He scored a couple of goals and a couple of nice passes with the outside of his left shoe and all that business. But I didn't see anything to get that excited about, that there was any sort of continuity there. There were tiny little glimpses occasionally, which were most welcome, but against the ratio of how much he's being paid and what we're getting in return, I just saw a horrible disparity. And nobody is thinking, and I said it last week, critically, nobody is taking the time. And people are just, I didn't want him here anyway. And they're just shouting out, well, get Nagelsmann in, get Brendan Rodgers in. And the reality is that, as we've gone over again and again and again, and there's the fatigue, that fans have slowly, the penny is dropping. And once we remove the fans who've got the agenda against Mourinho, which is based on irrational contempt, then it's difficult to, without disappearing down a rabbit hole here, but bad times equal confusion. And people aren't in the best place to deal with stuff. And this is like, and always when there's bad times, idiots join in and they speak very loudly and they add to the confusion. And this was exhibited, for example, with the COVID thing. I see them less, but I still see them now on Twitter and on Facebook. People saying, do you know of anybody that's died of COVID? And what they're actually saying is, I think it's a complete swizz, a complete swindle and a hoax. I've never met anybody that's died of cancer, so cancer doesn't exist. I've never met anybody who, smoked and died of whatever. And those people, the sheer unbridled ignorance of their contribution to the debate doesn't add anything. But it's, as I say, confusion, bad times. And we've had the rednaps who are positively sinister, and Merson, who's just got no filter. But they're saying, oh, I'd give this 31-year-old, a nice run out. And the reality is that he got a nice run out against Brighton, and he was shocking. Contributed absolutely nothing. Gives me no pleasure to say this, because there was a part of me that bought into it. And it would have been brilliant to see him come back and, rekindle all the magic and everything. And it's not happened, and it's not going to happen. And I think the problem with Bale is that he's become almost obsessed, preoccupied with examining his own infirmity. And too many years of being overpaid and underused. And I think he's actually just... It's like when Ericsson was with us. He wasn't giving us his utmost because he didn't want to get injured. I don't have an issue with that. But it's almost like he forgot how to switch it on again when he went to Inter.
Well, I don't think you're wrong, but I am going to hold out some hope because, in the words of Elon Musk, I would rather be an optimist and wrong than a pessimist and right.
Yeah, exactly. But, we are where we is. And the other one was people, wanting Dele Alli to be given a run. And I think he's in a very similar situation. He's had the rug pulled out from beneath his feet with Mourinho. He never had to try particularly hard to be in the starting 11 with Poch.
No.
And it comes as absolutely no surprise that he didn't need to compete in training in order to get selected there. And it comes as no surprise, if these suggested links are true, that PSG, now managed of course by Pochettino, were the only side that have put their hand up and said, yeah, we'll take him. I just don't see a queue round the block for him at all.
No. Shame. What are we talking about next?
Well, the trouble is we're going over a lot of ground, so this might not be the longest show.
I've just seen a great big bold capital word that says deadbeats.
Yeah, and again, I think that especially after the Everton game.
I'm so pleased I just went and got some shut-eye and missed that winning goal.
Well, you missed nothing, and the problem
us losing.
I mean, I just said there that you got the scumbags like the rednaps, and I'm surprised Tim Sherwood hasn't crawled out of the same rock. But this business of, I think it's Mourinho. Forget we've got players that have been here for 7 and 8 seasons and have done nothing but pocketed a Audi Cup Winners' medal, which just about sums things up. But forget those guys. Oh no, it's got to be Mourinho. Well, hang on a minute. If it's Mourinho, then why wasn't it Pochettino's fault? And why do you still want him back? Or why do you still think he's a great manager? Because he couldn't get a tune out of these guys either. And the amount of people that are still on the books who've been fumbling around forever. I mean, the idea that Eric Lamela is looking good again in the brief bits we're seeing from him is pretty risible. I mean, I would never say never to any footballer, but at what point do you stop putting money on the same horse with the bookies?
Do you know who I'm really missing?
Go on.
Reggie. And I don't think we'd have lost that Everton game.
I think
we'd have won a significant number of other games, or won those that we've drawn, if we had Reggie.
What we're looking at the moment, and the prognosis isn't great, I can tell you that, is Lo Celso and Reggie are out still for a good bit. And what we're looking at is the same situation, because it's more or less the same pond of pools, the same pool of players in the squad that Pochettino had when he took out players to rest them to play in Europe or in the cups, and we always looked a bit clueless and a bit directionless and a bit kind of, oh geez, what is the point? It's like when you'd rest somebody who's good in centre midfield and bring Winks on, and there'd be a slight sort of groan when you see but you knew it was going to happen. Or you see Dele Alli played up top because he's got to rest Kane, because Kane's played 15 games in 8 days or whatever. And there's stuff that there's no elasticity, there's no choice in the numbers, there's nowhere else for the coach to go. And with injuries, that really kills it, because there's nothing you can do. And Mourinho is having to play people that just aren't up to standard. And his hands are absolutely tied. He's added players in the window. Some have worked, some haven't worked. It's kind of irrelevant whose picks they were, but I think we know that Højbjerg was a Mourinho pick. I think we know, excuse me, that Gedson Fernandes, who was marked return to sender and stuck back in the mail, I think we know that he was a Steve I hate my job kitchen pick. And the problem is that once you start shedding these guys, forget the poor guy of Gedson, never going to make it at any particularly high level ever. But once you start losing these guys who are injured, it's the same situation, as I said, with Poch when he was playing European and domestic cup games. We just become incredibly fragile. And this January, we really, really should have done something. And I've done stuff on this in the blog before, and it sort of became a bit more widespread, and you heard commentators on TV and radio using the phrase. But I think it was one of the TalkSport presenters said about the lack of churn in the Tottenham squad. And all of this, and this is why I do get angry with them, because I'm not stupid, and stupid people do make me annoyed. But I understand why fans are anti-Mourinho. They know Levy's not going anywhere, cannot go anywhere. We had the numbers out last week, the Swiss Ramble analysis of the numbers. Over £1 billion, 1.175 billion or something. Just a horrific amount of money. And unless they're prepared to sell for,
What does that number represent? What's that for?
The negative, how much the
Debt.
club debt's carrying. And there's all sorts of different debt, and that's just the big gross fat number I'm pulling out. Working debt minus, cash in the bank, which is worth, it's 200 million or something. But the gates are closed and there's nobody coming in.
Yeah.
And nobody's buying any shirts.
No.
Oh yeah, remind me about merchandise. That's a funny one. We'll finish on that because that's quite amusing.
I will.
I'm dying here. Hang on.
Don't die.
Won't actually die. That might have been
Not
a bit of
live.
an overstatement.
Don't do a Tommy Cooper.
Yeah, but the situation is that January was extraordinary. That we just didn't do anything. We got rid of a few people, and I know I covered it the other week. Arsenal got shaved 700,000 off of the thing. We didn't do that. We shaved about 60 quid off of our wage bill, and the sad
Stuck
thing.
some stuff on Gumtree.
But the sad thing, yeah, collection only. But the sad thing is that until this is corrected and we stop being so sluggish and so conservative, things are only going to get worse, because this that we're looking at the moment, with Eric Dyer's been around for 7 or 8 seasons, Lamela, all these other guys, Danny Rose still on the books, at home, presumably watching videos of himself handing out pizzas, I don't know. But we've got all these people holding us back, and we're just not churning them and getting them out the door. And well-run football clubs don't operate like this. So I understand the fatigue in the fan base, and I think this sort of fatigue hits daft people the hardest. So instead of wading through all this and saying, well, he's supposed to be a manager, get someone in who can manage him. All I'm seeing is all this defensive, boring football. I don't want to watch it. Well, the problem is, that's easily said. But what Mourinho was trying to do was to make us slightly more watertight defensively, because our defence hasn't been the same since Rose and Walker were split up, and Toby and Vertonghen were in the middle. Vertonghen pensioned off. Alderweireld isn't fit to play every single game. Has now have to be used more sparingly, and this is all down to one man. So we'll sack Mourinho or whatever, and we saw Mourinho.
Mourinho's been asked to make a silk purse out of a sow's ear right now.
That's the polite version, and we saw Mourinho mix it up and saw some fast, free-flowing football against Everton, because it was, but it was bloody dreadful. And it wasn't worth watching, and we lost. I mean, that game took me back to the Martin Yol era.
You said at the time, yeah.
Which was just, I mean, I was working in a place where there was one radio in this store, and I had to go around the building and this, that, and the other. And there was one lad who was stood doing a particular task by the radio. Mm-hmm. And every time I came through like a fire door thing, he'd be like, Maggie, and calling out, and he's saying to me, he said, you won't believe it, it's 6-2. It's 7-4. Do you know what I mean? And it's great, and that harem-scarum like thing, it's got an appeal to it. But you don't get anywhere with it. You don't win games with it. You certainly don't win trophies or championships.
No.
And so
I think it is attractive football to watch a really disciplined team who've had it drilled into them what they're to do. So they have particular cues to look out for and know how to react. And you drill that in practice, and you practice and you practice and you practice. And then when it comes to the game, because you've got that trigger, that cue, and you know, right, he's gone there to do that, I've watched him, he's about to do this, I know I now do that, then they don't have to think. They just go. It flows. As soon as any of our players have to stop and think, you can see it happening, with the exception of a few who are naturals in inverted commas. Yeah. As soon as they have to stop and think, half a second too late, pass hasn't been made, or it hasn't been made to the right man, or the tackle went in too late, or the keeper was like quarter of an inch away. And if the players are fresh enough, open enough to the ideas, can have that discipline instilled, and this is the other bit you need, you can be super disciplined and everybody can be doing exactly as they're asked, if they also have confidence on the pitch. Yeah. And confidence comes with winning. We were doing that when we beat Man City.
Well, do you want to hear? Do you want to hear?
And we're about to play them again today.
Do you want to hear a funny factoid that sprung up by total chance today?
Let's go funny factoid.
I was watching Soccer AM and they're doing that thing because I only bit of that show I can cope with, but I really
I'm not
enjoy
sure
it.
you're their demographic.
No. I like the headers and volleys thing they do.
Yeah.
Because that can be entertaining. And the question on there for the footballer was City are on an unbeaten run of 15 games. Who played them the last time they lost? And the guy couldn't get it, and nobody was shouting it out in the very scant just crew because there's no audience there anymore.
Yeah.
It was Tottenham.
Yeah.
And there were two things that pinged up in my brain because I said Spurs straight away.
Yeah.
And the first thing was, well, how the mighty have fallen. And the second thing was that I just remember the backlash from our fans who were unhappy with that win.
Yeah.
And people, we're in for a lot more of this. Not you being unhappy, but a lot more of us not winning. And the problem is, and this is something just off the top of my head, and I think it's symptomatic with the complaints from the dull, stupid fans that we're not giving Bale a run, we're not giving Dele Alli a run, and this is a good team, this is a good squad. No, it was a good squad. This team is out of date, defunct, run out of energy, and I just think there's something particularly toxic about somebody going into work at the same place every day forget football, but for 10 years or 20 years or 30 years and doing the same thing. I can understand the guy in the loading bay becoming a board member because he knows the business inside throughout and he's seen the company evolve and he's understood it and he's read it and it makes a perfect internal progression. That I applaud. But if you're telling me that lad on minimum wage has been stood there at that desk opening boxes and putting them onto the conveyor belt for the last 8 years, that tells me he's either stealing, that isn't his real name and he's wanted for murder in some different country, or he's a bit damaged and it's good he's being looked after, or I don't know what. But I don't have any... There you go, there was 5 things there and I don't have anything positive. I've only got suspicion and worry over somebody who's... And that's why I look at Harry Winks and I just don't buy it. I don't buy it. And his Muppet eyebrows, his Muppet Show Jim Henson eyebrows, I just don't buy it. He comes into it and you tell me he's revved up and ready to rock and roll. Not a chance. And I just find it curious that people who make comments, these judgments about these players and say, oh, it's a good squad. They just need managing. It's a good... They've never worked in the real world and they've never managed real people. Because if I can smell it through my TV set...
we did pay quite a lot for that TV set.
Yeah. I just find it staggering. But he's surrounded by players who too frequently are making individual errors and destroying the whole thing. Eric Dyer is a great example of an individual error machine. People have a pop about Aurier, but at least he does it because he's out of his mind. He was born out of his mind. I love the guy, but I acknowledge what he is. Yeah, but Eric Dyer, there's other players, and these players, they've just got themselves. What they need is a good move to Bournemouth or a good move to Manchester United or wherever it is. But they just the box needs to be shaken at Tottenham, and they've not shaken the box for a long time. And I just think that this window, the Dele Alli thing, just said to me, nothing has changed. Absolutely nothing has changed. Levy has no ambition. Looks at the table. He says, well, it's a crazy season. We're 8th. We're 9th. What's there to panic about? Hopefully, a couple of other people above us will screw up. We can get a run together and we might get top 4 because all I really care about is getting Champions League or UEFA, Europa League money's coming in. So that's it, folks. The prognosis ain't good because we need players. And I'm not talking about giving Jose Mourinho millions and zillions of pounds, but I'm talking about him being able to do some more business along the lines of Højbjerg.
Quite. Viking.
And I mean, Rodon looks quite good. Again, individual errors, but he's coming in from a different direction.
Yeah,
He's young.
newbie.
He's young and he can be trained. You cannot train out of... It's the old dog, new tricks. You cannot train out of an old dog bad habits. You might be able to, but it's going to probably break you and the dog, which isn't fair to anybody. And these players, it's too far gone. Eric Lamela has been running into blind alleys forever. And there's always... I saw on Twitter, somebody I follow, there was no good betting on the Everton game. You'd have to guess that there was... Even if you guessed there was going to be 16 corners for Everton or something, you couldn't get a good price on anything. He got a good price because he bet on Eric Lamela to get a card. Pick up a yellow card.
Talking of old dogs, new tricks, I think our puppo wants to go for a walk.
Okay. Can I mention the merchandising? Very quickly.
Oh, I forgot,
2 minutes.
didn't I? I forgot.
Yeah, it's all right.
You
Well,
told me
it's
to
all right.
remind you.
Okay.
I was more worried about the dog.
He's fine. He's not going anywhere.
Because we haven't
see what I
taken
did
him
there?
out yet. Merchandise. Tell us about merchandise.
I would advise anyone listening to click on the Spurs website, and this is the tip of the iceberg, and there's more coming. They've brought out these little puppets that are they're like little dolls, like little voodoo doll type things. And if they did a Donna Marie Cullen or a Daniel Levy, I'd be in. But they brought these dolls out, a stuffed toy, like a soft toy thing. And then they've superimposed over, obviously, the generic shirt and whatever, the photographs, the faces of players.
Sounds awful.
It's worse. This was a good idea in theory. Okay, and because they're using the photos, you don't get any of that kind of... Is that Eric Dyer or is that somebody from Carlisle United?
Has it come out looking like something from a GCSE art workshop?
Much, much worse. This is so dark. I've got to be very careful how I say it, because obviously we live in troubled times and people get offended by things. Have you seen Time Bandits?
Yes.
Do you remember the bandits themselves?
I do. Yes.
Those excellent professional actors.
Yes. Who were quite just small in stature.
Big guys, big hearts, great careers, and nothing wrong with them as human beings. But if you look at the Tottenham players, and then you look, and you don't have to do it particularly quickly, then look at a Time Bandits picture, there's an awful lot of similarity with very blocky, stumpy heads and broad necks. It's so bad. And I saw earlier today on Facebook, garden gnomes with badges on. Now, Spurs...
What, they look like the players?
No. They look like gnomes. And
they haven't got like a Harry Kane face and then drawn a beard on.
You see, that would have been quite... that might have been going somewhere. That could have salvaged the operation.
They have one of Danny Rose, and then just the thing on the bottom of it says "Gone fishing."
Gone fishing, gone pizzaing. But the gnomes... the dolls are an unbelievable, like £28-29, which is extraordinary. I mean, I think you could probably get an entry-level little stiff bear on a keyring for less money from Hamleys. That's the wrong direction they've gone with these. But they look like there's a gene pool issue. That's as close as I'm going to go.
But you see, anything like dolls and puppets and...
Yeah.
Freak me out anyway.
And children on adverts singing with adult voices.
Oh no, that's even
completely
worse.
freaky.
That's really strange.
Yeah.
No. Not...
So all I'm saying is that when we covered the thing, what's the gentleman's name again? Mr. Todd Klein has come in. There were also other shake-ups in the hierarchy, and one of them was a retail division. So I think the plan is to go... like with the COVID thing, we're going to have more lockdowns because the last lockdown didn't work. So this is going to be the ultra lockdown. I think we're heading for a tsunami of really shit gifts from Spurs. Because they're not making any money at the moment.
Maybe we should start shit gift of the week or fortnight or month, depending how frequently we manage to put
gift of the week, shift
gift
of the week,
shifty gift week. That's you.
I've won. Yeah, so we've got Time Bandit soft toys and generic gnomes. Can you tell that Daniel?
We are so in trouble.
Can you tell that Daniel Levy is still at the wheel? Who could work? I think we're going to have to call in Hetty Wainthropp.
I just want to win some silverware.
Yeah, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Obviously, this is going to be heard by people after the game, but I'll be fascinated to see what happens against City. I hope we hold our reserve and at least get a draw. But I fear.
On that note,
Pick Tottenham.
ta-da! Well done. You made it through to the end. Do us a favour. Like, rate, review, subscribe. And tell your friends about us, because they've not been through enough this last year. Cheers, guys. Keep it Tottenham.